Warriors wake up, soldiers check in. What mission are we on today? Ah, let's get it. Feeling strong this morning, feeling phenomenal. Let me fix this. Yeah. Feeling powerful this morning, man. How y'all feel? Fired up. Listen, wanted to engage the family real quick in regards to engaging us before we engage everybody else, right? The concept of engaging us before we engage everybody else, right? Yesterday, I talked about moving until something moves in us, right? Moving, getting up and moving before something moves in us. Getting up and moving before something moves in us. I mean, to allow or spark something to move in us. Today, I want to look at engaging us before we engage the world, right? Engaging you before you engage the world, before we engage, the people that we have to connect with, engaging our students, the youth that we are engaged with, for my pipeline of power builders, our children, right? Because as stakeholders, as the village who are in position to raise, cultivate, and protect, right? It's imperative that we are able to engage the world in the most powerful version of ourselves that we can rise to or elevate to in that day, in that morning, right? So today is another opportunity. Listen to me. Today is another opportunity for us to elevate our energy to a space where we engage our environment, we engage the people that we are interacting with, right? We engage them in a way that's impactful, in a way that uh, allows us to make an influence on those people in a way that changes and shifts their energy, changes and shifts their direction, right? But in order to do that, listen to me. Right now, we have to take the time to engage us before we engage the world, right? Many times, listen to me, and this is something that I battle with, that I struggle with. When we get up in the morning, right? We get up in the morning, one of the first things we do, and we got to be honest with it. We got to be real with it. This ain't just, our children and the youth. You know what I'm saying? This is also us that have more experience in the world, right? We engage our phones, right? We engage the so-called cyber world immediately when we wake up to the world, right? We're engaging a cyber world as the first experience of our day, right? The first interactions that we are experiencing is in a cyberspace, right? For many of us, we start scrolling, we start trying to figure out who's doing what, who said what happened last night. We trying to engage the world, right? Whether it's a cyber world, right? Before we engage ourselves. And I'm talking about really tapping into our own energy, our own frequency, right? So what's the power of engaging ourselves first, right? When we engage ourselves before we engage the world, we able to tap into who we are so we can elevate our energy so that the energy from the world cannot dictate how we experience the world, right? I'm gonna say it again. The power of engaging ourselves first allows us to elevate our energy, our frequency, our vibrancy, our vibes to a level that disallows, that prevents the outside world, outside influence, and outside influences, outside inputs to dictate, manipulate, right? How we experience the world, right? Because our experience of the world should come from how we envision maximizing how we gonna make things happen on a daily basis, how we gonna engage in accomplishing missions and objectives, and how we want to impact those that we are in position to impact, how we are going to best influence those that we say we love, lead, and feed, right? So before we engage the world, before we engage even in the cyber world, even if you're listening to me right now, we are becoming conscious that this is a exercise in us engaging ourselves. Even you talking to me right now, even if you're listening to me right now, this is an exercise. This is a spark of consciousness of engagement of ourselves right now as we prepare to take on the world. One of the things about unlocking and unleashing that warrior in us is that before you take on any war, before we take on any battle, we got to find that energy in ourselves to be ready to handle the challenges of the battles that we're about to go and fight, right? When we unlocking and unleashing that energy in us, right, that warrior energy, right, it's important that we tap into our own frequency first so that we can have the proper mindset to focus so that we can take on the battles that we're about to face day in and day out, right? Because we're in a war for the minds. We're in a war for the minds of those that we love. We're in a war for the minds for our children, for our students. Listen, we are in a war, right? And it's because of that seriousness that we got to engage us to make sure we on point, to we make sure that we are demonstrating self-love, right? That we are demonstrating self-discipline and identifying where we are in our self-concept, our self-esteem, right? The way that we envision and perceive ourselves first before we go and influence somebody else in how they are developing, how they're growing. Listen to me, this is critical, right? So engage ourselves first before we engage the world, right? For many of us, that may look different in different ways, right? For many of us that tap into that warrior energy, that tap into this notion of movement, the kinesthetic genius, the way that we need to get our mind, body, and spirit in alignment before we go out and engage in a divine assignment in the world. We got to get up and move, and that's what I was talking about yesterday. That movement allows something to move inside of us, right? So engaging ourselves looks like the opportunity to get up and really tap into ourselves, right? And understanding us, right? The way that we best learn, the way that we best engage the world, right? Our learning and engagement style, right? What is the best way that you engage the world, right? And I'm talking about in the way that you feel most confident, right? How is that? What does that look like? How do you envision how you are best engaging the world, right? Does that look like, listening to something that sparks your mind to be able to think about what the best approaches that you need in order for you to engage students today, right? The best approaches that would, maximize the interactions with coworkers today. The best approaches that would need to be activated in order to properly engage clients, right? To engage customers, to engage the people that you are engaged. Listen to me. What is your most optimal way of engaging and experiencing the world? We got to understand that about ourselves. That's what I mean, engaging ourselves. We got to understand some things about ourselves. We got to ask some critical questions to ourselves. That's why you got to come into the lab. Because in the Pipeline of Power Builders lab, we put ourselves under investigation. We put ourselves under evaluation. We ask ourselves questions, right? So for me, I understand it. I have to be in movement, right? I got to be in a space where I can kind of connect, right, to nature. I need to put my feet on the ground, right? And we're going to talk more about why this is critical, right? Building the warrior feet, right? Because I've been through so much from my feet up, not understanding what it means to get grounded, right? When you understand that your strength has to come from a foundation, right? I had to engage myself to understand that. So over the last several years, I have been consistently I put myself in the lab. I had to ask the questions. If I'm having issues, if I'm having pain, I'm having discomfort, I'm having struggles, right, in my mind, my body that connects to the struggles that I'm having, the pain and discomfort and, the lack of relief that I'm having in my feet, that affects my ankles, right? Had a torn Achilles, right? My knees. Oh man, we gonna get into the knees, right? Later on. But arthritis, back issues, right? Hips, all these various things that were breaking me down, right? That oftentimes we believe is a normal. We look at this, oh, that's just a part of it. Listen to me, it's not. Right? It's about tapping into yourself to identify what it is that you need to really focus your energy on to strengthen, right? What are the areas that we need to strengthen in so that our superpowers cannot wane, but they get stronger? We don't wane in our superpowers as we grow older. We are supposed to gain in our superpowers as we grow older, but it's more strategic, right? We're talking about strategy. What is the strategy that you need to take in order to grow in your natural brilliance, your natural genius, your natural superpowers, the way that you engage the world, right? Your genius learning style, the way that you engage, from a concept of, thinking, right? The way that you feel, your understanding of emotions, right? How do you need to how do we need to tap into ourselves? What focus do we need to have and take out time to engage ourselves so that we understand how to best grow and pursue the most powerful version of ourselves, right? And for me, I got to be moving. I have this kinesthetic grounding, right, that has to happen in order for me to open up something inside my mind so that I can be to think about how I need to engage the world, how I need to strategically take on various tasks, how I need to understand challenges so that I'm not afraid of those challenges. I don't run from those challenges, but I feel a confidence that allows me to have courage going into a challenge because I know on the other side of that challenge is the pursuit, right? Is the growth, is the movement towards my purpose that I've been created to pursue, right? How do you understand yourself? We're in the lab now. We need to ask them questions before we go into battle today, before we go into classrooms today, before we go into, workplaces, before you get behind the desk today, before you have to engage people that may not be having these sessions with themselves. They're not asking the questions in the Pipeline of Power Builders Lab. You asking yourself the questions. So what are the questions that we need to ask? How do you need to take time, right, to engage yourself, to understand what you need to focus on in order to grow, to become, to get stronger, so that you engage the world in a way that continues your forward progression, that continues your growth, that continues the maturation process towards your full power and potential, that continues your journey towards what you are envisioning yourself becoming and how you're going to impact the world, right? Your vision for future impact. How do we need to engage ourselves to understand ourselves so that every action and decision contributes to our continued growth journey, forward movement, so that we don't take these continual steps back. We don't find ourselves in a state of depression. We don't find ourselves in anxiety trying to figure out how did I get to this space, right? Because we got lost in the midst of distraction and dysfunction and doubts and disappointment. No, I'm talking about engaging ourselves first and understanding ourselves, asking those critical questions, putting ourselves in the lab, we in the Pipeline of Power Builders Lab, and asking ourselves, how do we need to engage ourselves before we engage the world, before we turn the phone on, before we start scrolling through everybody else's life, right? How do we need to engage the life that we have inside of us, the energy that we have inside of us, the life force, right? How do we need to tap into the creator, right? How do we need to tap into, our higher powers, our higher understanding of ourselves, our higher frequencies? How do we need to engage that first before I step into, right, the next phase of life, before I step into these circles where people are going to be bringing in their energy, and those energies may be toxic because they're not asking these questions, right? How do we do that, right? So that's what we're talking about this morning as we get warmed up for the day. As we get warmed up for the day, as we get our blood flowing, as we are tapping into our frequency, we are raising our vibration, because that vibration is going to set the tone, it's going to set the volume, right, for how the culture that we stepping into is going to operate. We are establishing an energy, right, that establishes an expectation for every environment that we enter. And you're going to hear me say that a lot because I'm very serious about that, because we control that narrative. We write that narrative. Every day we're writing our story, right? We're writing our story right now. So that's, hey, we are engaging. Y'all warm up with me as I'm preparing for my warrior hike today. As I'm 2 weeks out from my first big trail race, 15K in McKinney, Texas, on the 28th. If you are interested in being on the Pipeline of Power Warrior team and engage in that race, I mean, you ain't got to be able to tell you. I just want you to be involved. Let's get it, right? So September 28th, McKinney, Texas, right? I'm gonna send that out. I guess I should have put the links in. I will send that out so that the people can get engaged with it. But if you are interested in challenging yourself. I'm talking about pursuing the most powerful version of ourselves through challenges, right? Through understanding that it's going to take an alignment of our mind, body, and spirit in order for us to grow, right? Engaging ourselves. Because some of us in that engagement, you're going to identify that you need to be challenging yourself. You're going to identify that you in your health, right? You need to challenge your health in order for you to grow and be able to think clearly, right? So that you can identify the next steps in life, how to operate, how to overcome obstacles. Listen to me. Opportunities for growth are in those challenges, right? So identifying what those challenges are and identifying when we engage ourselves, how we need to move is going to become evident, right? So I want to collaborate in our journey, right? This is a collaboration. I believe in the community aspect of our growth and the synergy that it takes in order for us to be the most powerful village that we must be, so that we can be the most powerful example for those who we must raise, cultivate, and protect their opportunity to reach their full power and potential. But the priority is building ourselves. So guess what we're doing this morning? We are engaging us before we engage the world. Let's go get it today, man. Listen to me. All right, so for my warrior brothers and sisters, right, that's having issues in your feet, in your knees, right? We want to be able to get up and move those areas, right? Start to stimulate and spark those joints and ligaments, because we have to be strong from the feet all the way up, right? I call it warrior feet, right? I say we got to be strong from our feet, all right, through our elbows, through our nose, all the way up, right? Because essentially our body is built on a chain, right? It's built on a chain from our feet through our ankles and even our toes. Even our toes play a huge part in this, because all of those ligaments, all of those parts are connected together. So there is no disconnection between your feet and your neck, right? All of these things run in a chain. So we have to be strong from the body up, right? So putting your feet in the ground removes the things that prevent them from getting stronger. A lot of us have feet that are not strong enough to wear the shoes that we are wearing, right? And I didn't understand that growing up, especially if you have flat feet, right? And it don't matter what your arch look like, but especially for flat feet, because of the structure of the feet, you want to have the opportunity to strengthen those feet before you put it into this cast of a shoe, right? That prevents it from allowing the true strengthening of your feet, which strengthens your ankles, our knees, right? Our hips, all the way up through our backs. You know, when you're having all these different issues, listen to me. The only way that you know that is to engage yourself before you engage the world. Because oftentimes, if you engage the world first, right, that distraction of the world prevents us from being able to focus, right? And a lot of us talk about focus, and we want our children to focus. We want our students to focus, but it distracts us from focusing on the areas of ourselves that must be strong in order to alleviate the pains, right, the discomforts that also distract us from being able to focus on the mission that we are on. A lot of us have brilliance. We all have a natural brilliance. You have a natural talent. You have a natural inclination to engage, right, to impact, right? You purpose for impact, but our impact is affected by the pain, the discomfort, right? The subtle issues that come into our minds, right? All of these things affect our ability to be purposeful in the positions that we and purposes that we go into every day. So if you're an educator, listen to me. If you're in position, and I say quote unquote educator, because I'm not just talking about those that are in classrooms in front of students. I'm talking about if you are in position to help cultivate the developmental process of somebody outside of yourself, you know, on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, right? It's very important that you come into that opportunity with a mind that's clear, right? Clear of the dysfunction of your body, right? Clear of the dysfunction of your mind, right? Clear of a dysfunction of your spirit, of your emotions, right? That you come in there with a clear space to work from, a clear mind, a focus and intensity, right? And energy that's high, that you can give your all into that purpose of impacting the people that we are connected to, right? So that's why it's important to consistently engage ourselves in the process of strengthening every aspect of ourselves so that we can pursue the most powerful version of ourselves. Listen to me, this is critical. As I'm preparing for my warrior hike today, man, help me prepare for my warrior trail today, my work today, right? The things that I got to think through, the things that we have to prepare for, right? The different strategies that we have for our businesses, my entrepreneurs who are looking at various problem solving approaches, right? When you're looking at, okay, how do we grow? How do we grow, right? Oftentimes, that strategy is going to take a re-envisioning. It's going to take a re-envisioning in order for us to be able to implement something that will grow us, that will grow our business, that will grow our company, that will grow our organization, our organizational leaders, right? That are in position to impact whole communities, right? At the local, state, and national level, right? You having to work with collaborations of organizations that have different agendas, right? That have different ways of doing things, right? Oftentimes, that is some of the most difficult work, to work with collaborations, collaborative efforts between organizations that have different functions, that have different mission statements and different ways of approaching, community engagement or youth development, right? But you are in position to organize and coordinate that collaboration. Oftentimes, it takes a different type of energy. It takes you tapping into something different that allows us to envision a different approach to engaging that those collaborations. Because if you go into those collaboration opportunities with all those organizations and all those personalities, right, and all those people that have different ways of thinking and different generational uh, demographics, and your feet hurt, or you thinking about something that you saw on the news, and you haven't tapped into yourself to understand the way that you need to approach something. You haven't envisioned it. You haven't scripted how you want to. And I'm talking about visually scripted how you want, the meeting to go, how you need, how you can see, if we are to operate as a collaborative, as a community, what that looks like at its highest power and potential, right? If you haven't envisioned that, you haven't taken time to tap into that highest level of energy that would show us, right? We haven't tapped in with the creator in a way that would show us what that looks like for that collaboration of organizations to be operating in flow. Then it becomes very difficult when you go into a situation with those organizations and they start talking about 25 different things, right? Or there's some type of conflict, right? And there's some frustration that happens, right? That frustration, if we have not tapped into ourselves, we become a part of that frustration, or that frustration becomes a part of us. We become influenced by that energy because we haven't engaged ourselves before we engage them. So the opportunity to engage ourselves is something that we cannot minimize. We cannot overlook, right? This is a phenomenal opportunity to tap into energy, to tap into the power of ourselves and understand how potent we are, right? Before we engage in the world that may not understand how important and how potent they are. And guess what? When you tap in with people that understand how potent you are, it makes the collaboration that much more potent, that much more powerful, right? The pipeline that we are building for what we are to where we're created to go, it becomes something that's even stronger. The material that is of a pipeline becomes even more activated, right? And I say it oftentimes, just like with the body, man, when you focus on consistent development and growth and strengthening yourself from the foundation up, from the feet up, you activate a level of what I call that vibranium. You activate it, right? So you become invincible more and more. You become bulletproof, right? You tap into superpowers, right? And you become superheroes, right? For my young warriors. And I'm talking about you because that was something that we valued as children. The concept of superheroes and all the cartoons that we watched that showed superheroes overcoming their enemies, right? Overcoming the villains, right? It's the same concept. It's the opportunity to tap back into that childlike energy so that you can take that the imagination, the creativity, right, that we had as children when you imagine how you overcame, your enemy, how you overcame the adversary, right? The different challenges, right? It's the same concept. All of that is still in us, but the only way you can find it is to engage ourselves, right? Engage ourselves before we engage the word, because the word is going to tell us that we don't have that anymore. The word is going to tell us that you can't stretch your body anymore. It's going to tell you that you can't bend your knees anymore. It's going to tell you that you can't jump anymore. It's going to tell you that you can't get on the ground and get back up anymore. It's going to tell you all of these various lies and limitations, right? And when you go into situations where you are, especially when you're working with young minds, and you go in with limitations, those limitations, you spew those limitations onto the next generation, right? And that in itself is a violation of the village. That in itself is a violation of the village. So if you go into a situation as an educator, as somebody that's in position to influence the next generation, and you go in with the mindset of limitation, lack and limitation, right? And you spew those limitations, that lack, those stereotypical limitations that oftentimes is inundated in the rhetoric that we hear. If you spew those limitations on the next generation, on our young warrior leaders, you in violation, right? We in violation if you spew limitation, lack, right? You speaking from stereotypical rhetoric, right? That you saw on some, on social media, or you saw on the news, and you start to play that in your mind, and you speak from that subconscious imagery, right? That subconscious messaging, and you put that on our children, and because guess what? They are also getting those inputs. So think about it like that. So if children are getting negative inputs because they're scrolling, right? They're not engaging themselves, and this ain't just for us, right? This is for you too. Like the same way that we're talking about engaging ourselves before we engage the word, the message in itself is something that we also take into our opportunity to impact our children, to impact the students that we're working with, right? Those that's in higher education that want to intensify the engagement of first, quote unquote, first time college students that are first generation, and we need to really look at that terminology, right? Shifting the experience to something that nobody's ever experienced before. So it's not first generation, it's an empowered generation when you understand how powerful you are and you take on the experience of the college experience, right? From an empowered perspective. Right. So we need to look at that. But if you are in position to influence and you seriously trying to change the culture of the campus, right, to those students feel a sense of belonging. They feel a sense of, hey, this is where I'm supposed to be, and this is where I can grow and become and pursue my vision for impact in this space, and the resources and the community and the village around me is supportive, and I feel like I can accomplish anything. If that's the case, then you got to engage yourself first in order to bring that type of energy to those students. You can't come to the thing with the limitations that are already in the conversation about this generation and believe that you're going to change the situation. Stop playing. Let's go. Engage ourselves before we engage the world. Listen, engage ourselves before we engage the world. Right? I got to get a good one in today. I got to get a good warrior training in today. 2 weeks, for less than 2 weeks now to the 28th for the McKinney Warrior Trail Race, man. All right. So trying to get it in, man. Also looking for sponsors. If you want to sponsor me as a warrior hybrid barefoot athlete, yep. So when I do my doggone trail races, I go without, I don't have the traditional shoes on, right? Because those traditional shoes, like I say, have been the denigrator of my, my warrior energy through my body, you know what I'm saying? Through my opportunity to maintain my kinesthetic prowess, my kinesthetic engagement with the world, right? So I had to shift that, right? So now I hardly ever, and that's the truth, I hardly ever wear shoes, right? The traditional shoes that you would think that have all the padding and the Nikes and all these, the ones that we become accustomed to, that we grew up on, right? I hardly ever wear those because it breaks down the functionality of the feet, right? And when you break down the functionality of the feet, it affects the functionality and the strength and the ability to maintain resistance in your feet, ankles, knees, hips. So if you're having issues in those, guess what? We got to start at the foundation, man. And I want to help my brothers and sisters, my warrior brothers and sisters. We're going to reclaim that kinesthetic energy. We're going to reclaim that kinesthetic engagement with the word, because the kinesthetic engagement fuels creativity in most of us, right? It fuels our way of really maximizing our time, right? Some of us, it's hard for us to even play with our grandchildren, right? Or play with our own children, right? Because we have lost that concept of mobility. We have lost our flexibility, our stability, right? If we fall right now, it would take, if we be real, it takes many of us time, right, to get back to our feet, and that's dangerous, right? So we want to be consistent in working on it, right? From the body, right, connects to the mind. There is no compartmentalizing of how our mind, body, and spirit works together. We got to work it together in collaboration. Everything is in collaboration. It's in collectivity, right? The synergy of our mind, body, and spirit is the same way we got to operate in the impacting of our world, in the impacting of our children, right? The way we pursue vision has to be a collective and village concept, because that's who we are. That's who we are, right? And the further we get away from that, the further we get away from greatness, the further we get away from countering the things that we complain about. So we got to go get it. All right. So engage yourself before you engage the world, whatever that looks like for you, right? Get into your deep breathing. Take a deep breath right now. Yeah. It feels good, man. So I'm getting my feet, my ankles, my knees ready, all right, for what I got to take on today. And guess what? At the same time, that means my mind is centering. I'm getting a vision, right? My vision is clarifying with every movement, right? On how I need to take on the day, how I need to engage my people, how I need to engage clients, how I need to create, the content that's going to be transformational, right? That's going to be impactful. What does that need to look like, right? I'm gaining confidence in every movement, right? Every engagement with myself, every question I ask of myself in the lab, right? The answers that I provide, it brings clarity to how I need to move so that I can maximize life, so I can maximize and pursue purpose, right? So at the end of this time, right, that I spent on this earth, I won't be in regret trying to figure out why I didn't give my all. Or my great grandchildren won't be asking why you didn't accomplish this. I heard that you had this talent. I heard that you had this ability. I heard that you had this vision early on. Why didn't you pursue it? Why didn't you give your all to it? Listen, that question, even in now, is a question that we need to be addressing, right, with our minutes, with our moments, right, with the time that we have now. And guess what? If we engage ourselves before we engage the world, we can find the answer to those questions. And we can answer those questions in action, right, in effort, right, in strategy, right, collectively. So let's do that. Let's go. So I'm opening up everything right now. All right. So one of the issues that I have that I'm really tapping into is my feet. I mean, not just my feet, but my hips, right? Opening up my doggone hips. Yeah. And I know for many of us, that's a tough aspect that we often lose, is that hip mobility, right? So I work a lot on this, all right? I work a lot on my hip mobility to really open them up, to really open my hips up. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. But you want to make sure that it's consistent, right? It's consistent. Consistently opening up, stretching hips, right? Stretching your hips. Hip mobility is critical. They say, matter of fact, they say hip mobility is one of the most critical aspects for longevity, right? For when we get into our elder years, right? Our elders, think about your grandparents, right? When we get into our elder years and you start to become more and more limited on hip mobility, oftentimes you fall and you hurt that hip. Science and studies show that if you break your hip in your elder stages, it decreases the lifespan significantly. So because we understand that, because we're learning that, we gain knowledge of that, right? When you engage yourself, you gain that knowledge. It's something that tells you to tap into that type of research and understanding, right? You tell yourself, uh, because that's the case, how do I prevent that from happening, right? Not only to ourselves, but when we have elders in our family, right? We have grandparents that we love, right? Aunties, aunts, right? We are able to now engage them with a solution as opposed to waiting for them to have the incident, and then all we can do is stand back and hope that they get better. Now, we don't have to hope that they get better. We got to engage in the understanding or the vision of them operating at their best, and then pursue that as the mission, right? So when I ask what mission you're on, these things become clearer when we engage ourselves, right? You're able to look at all of the aspects holistically of life, and then you identify what are the missions in those areas, from family to, a business to, entrepreneurship to engaging in our youth impact work, our community building work. Listen, you understand those missions because you have taken time to clarify the vision by opening up your own and elevating your own energy, right? Uh, so opening up them hips is critical as I get ready to close, because we finna get in it. We finna get in it. I'm feeling warm. I hope you are feeling warm. I hope you are feeling strong, right? Ready to take on every challenge of the day, ready to engage young minds, right? Ready to engage people around you, regardless of how they come. And guess what? How we come. It don't matter how they coming, it's how we coming. We done unlocked that warrior energy in us. It don't matter how they come. They can come with the lowest energy, but guess what? Our energy is so powerful because we have engaged ourselves. We have engaged our own frequency and rose our own frequency before we engage them. So however they coming, they're gonna have to come up to the level that we have sparked our own energy to come to, right? In this engagement of ourselves before we engage the world, right? So guess what? Either they got to come with it, or they got to get on from around it. You understand? Either they got to come with it today, whatever the mission, whatever objectives you're working on, whatever assignments, right? No matter how menial you think it is or how vast you think, it don't matter. You're gonna do it with an intensity that contributes to our growth in the. It don't matter what it is, right? You could be sweeping, you could be mopping, you could be creating, building, innovating, developing. So it don't matter. Whatever it is, we're going to engage in a way that our vision is for us to pursue the most powerful version of ourselves in the midst of every mission, every task. It don't matter. That's how we come in today, right? We're going to engage our students in a way that we understand that they are on a mission. They have been created to pursue the most powerful version of themselves. They have been created with vision. They have been created with natural genius and brilliance, right? The expectation is from a foundation of understanding their natural brilliance and genius. Therefore, that's how we're going to engage them, because we've engaged it in ourselves first. We've identified our own strength. We have identified our own superpowers. We have tapped into our own natural genius and the way that we engage and learn in the world. So we bringing that energy to them. So from that energy, we're going to engage them in a way that we understand how powerful they are. And that's the only way that we're going to speak to them. We're going to speak to them from an empowerment-based perspective, right? And that's the expectation. Ain't nothing else going to interrupt that. Ain't nothing else going to distract us from that, because we are engaged in higher level elevation right now. Now we finna walk into it. Now we finna go wash our face. Now we finna go get ready. We finna put our clothes on, put our shoes on. We gonna step out the door with a different mindset, because we engaged ourselves first before we engage the world. Let's go get it today. Listen, the mission does not stop. The mission does not wane. It does not fold. It only intensifies because the intensity that we bring to it takes it to another level. And that intensity is raised because we engage our most powerful selves. We get ourselves into our most powerful space before we go into any other space, any other place, any other environment, right? We bring our energy, our frequency with us. And everybody that connects to it, everybody that's in those environments, guess what? It's gonna be infectious to them, right? And they're gonna have to either rock with us. They're gonna either have to, well, like I say, they gonna ride or they gonna go high. But guess what? We gonna be us. Let's go get it today, man. We on a mission. I feel phenomenal. 2 weeks out, less than 2 weeks out. We about 12 days out from the McKinney Warrior Trail race, right? Or we're gonna be, it's 15K, so about 10 miles of trail run. That's the longest out. It's a challenge. It's an opportunity for growth. So I'm not gonna run from it. I'm gonna run through it, right? But I want to prepare for it, right? I'm taking on the challenge, and in taking on that challenge and setting that challenge and setting that vision, guess what? I'm pursuing it. And in that pursuit, I'm becoming better mentally, physically, and spiritually. I'm identifying areas of myself, right, that I need to improve, that I need to grow, right? And in that growth, you know what I'm saying, I'm starting to feel more confidence in these areas, right? In transitional phases, the transitional phases I'm in, you know, you identifying more opportunity, right, to tap into my authentic energy, right, and maximize that in a way that sustains the future. Listen to me. That's why we got to engage ourselves before we engage the world, because when we engage ourselves, we find purpose. We find why. We find the reason, the self-discovery, right? Because many times, you know, we've gone through all this stuff in our 20s and 30s, but then we find ourselves in a place where, you know what, all of those things that we thought was valuable is not as valuable as we thought. We start to find value in self-discovery. We start to find value in the peace and tranquility that we identify when we engage ourselves, when we disconnect from dysfunction. Listen, let's go get it today, man. It's a phenomenal day, a phenomenal opportunity to make a powerful impact. In fact, that's what we must do, because that's what we've been created to. Let's go get it today. We on a mission. I love y'all. Hey, welcome to the Pipeline of Power Builders Lab. We'll be back. Hey, Warrior Wednesday. You know we getting it in tomorrow. So let's go get it. Go get it today. Hold accountability for the work that we put in. Let's go get it. Build that mobility, stability, and flexibility so that you have the ability to take on every challenge. And even when something challenges you, we have built up so much strength from the foundation up, from our feet up, that even if we get knocked down, we have the ability to get up, reposition, and pursue again. Let's go get it today, man. We on a mission. Oh.